Hi, I'm Yegi. I'm an entrepreneur and success coach who wants it all: family, luxury, career, and the freedom to do whatever I want whenever I want. And I'll do whatever it takes to get there. I created the Yegi Project to document my journey and inspire others to do the same. My mission is to change the world by influencing and leading others to do what they love and live fulfilled lives. Hello. Welcome back to the Yegi Project. I'm your host, Yegi, and today's honored guest is Dr. Laura Gabayan, who is a world-renowned physician and researcher. She is regarded internationally as an expert in research and is the author of the book Common Wisdom. Well, doctor, please let us know in your own words, who are you? Where did you get started? What inspired you to even start your research in the Wisdom Research Project?
Hi, thank you for having me. And a lot of people ask in general, why did I choose to write this, like you said, so as you can tell, my speech is not great. I went to medical school, then I specialized in emergency medicine, and then I did research, more training in research, and I was publishing in research, and then my body started to fall apart in 2013. And as it stands, my speech is not great because I slur it, and it's my lips are, my muscles are weakened within my body and my legs, and so I was like, well, medicine was actually very they wanted to diagnose and put you in a box and give you a label. That's how they were, and the people who didn't do that were the wise. And so then I looked into wisdom, and I found that we don't know much about it. And that's when I started the Wisdom Research Project. And I interviewed, and knowing me, being a scientist, I don't like one person's perspective, so then I interviewed 60 people.
Within your research project, you interviewed 60 people to learn more about wisdom. Is that correct?
So when you do a research project, you always want to know what's out there before. And in the geriatric psychology and sociology journals, we knew that wisdom has an inverse U relationship with age. So the people I spoke with were age 50 to 79. And we also knew that wisdom can only be identified by another human being. Not by a test, not by a questionnaire, not by a computer, none of that. And that's when I was like, okay, so, and then being the science people have asked me, how did you find this 60? I'm like, well, I had nothing to do with it. I asked random people, community leaders, clergy, anyone, if they knew someone that was wise.
Huh. So what is wisdom? And let's start there. What is wisdom and who is considered to be wise?
So I didn't decide who was wise. I'd left this to the people who nominated other people, and that's why we initially created the website, the wisdomresearchproject.com. And I broke down wisdom into the 8 common elements, and hence the name Common Wisdom of my book. And the first one being most common, and then last one being the least. And I'll tell you what 8 elements they are and what the order is. And the first was resilience, kindness, positivity, spirituality, humility, tolerance, creativity, and curiosity.
Okay. Can we go over each of those if you don't mind?
Yeah. So in my book, I talk specifically about people who have those traits. But the idea of resilience, it was fascinating to me, the number of people that had gone through horrible life events and yet were not upset about it. They weren't bitter. They were kind of at peace. And kindness, it was something that people use not only towards themselves, they were kind to themselves, but kind to others and kind to mankind. meaning they were nonprofits, they volunteered, they did big things too. So kindness was very important to them. And the third thing was positivity, and that's why I feel like they're all related. And that to be positive, it helps to be positive if you're resilient. So they're all related. And so the fourth so positivity, let me tell you. So that one, think about the people you want to surround yourself with. You don't want to be around a negative person. You want to be around a positive person that sees the positive to everything. And then spirituality, it's the idea that there's something bigger than who we are. And that gives people a lot of faith and hope and kind of peace that there is a bigger picture to what's going on. And then it was humility. Oh my gosh, the people that were so well accomplished and really didn't want to talk about it. And it took me searching online about them, and that's how I found out a lot of what I wrote.
Wow.
And after humility was tolerance, and intolerance was not only being open minded, but also patient of other thoughts, of other viewpoints, being tolerant of other, not just what we think of tolerance, but a greater perspective. And
Mm.
then creativity and curiosity were the last two, and I always tell people, think of a little kid. We all have it in us. We're all creative. We're all curious. And some people get it taken out of them, depending on the life they live. And some people kind of focus on that. So it's not just being an artist that's creative. It's being able to think broadly as well. And being curious was the last one. But I feel like being curious is the foundation of all of these common elements. So so I feel as a scientist that's what defines wisdom is these 8 elements.
So those were the 8 common elements you found in all the wise people you interviewed.
Yes.
That's what the research led to. So if somebody wants to go that path of becoming wise and successful, these are the 8 characteristics or skills they need to work on to develop.
And I think it's important to look at the 8 and say, well, I'm really good at this and I'm not good at that. And for example, kindness was not something on my radar. And to arrive at all those 8, I did ask everyone the same 10 questions. And kindness was big for them, as I said. And so it was not on my radar. And being from the Middle East, as you would know, it's not something talked about where I came from. It's not something respected. It's not something, it's viewed more like weakness.
I see.
But I view it as a strength now.
Of course. So what helped change your perspective on that?
I think it's just, first of all, understanding the 8 and knowing they exist. And that's why I tell everyone, just knowing them and thinking about them is what will get you started. So, reading, and by the way, the book is very simple to read. Calm Wisdom, my book is just, I purposely wanted to make it simple but powerful. So, knowing the 8 elements is important, but it also makes them important to you.
I see.
So, that's what
Almost like
changed it for
Yeah, it's
me.
almost like the awareness. If you're aware of it, then more likely you can commit to it or notice it and act on it, right? Or even learn more about it.
Yes. So, being
Now,
aware of it.
can we talk a little bit about how you can harness the power of wisdom to improve your everyday life? Because that's a key point from your book, correct?
So I think a lot of people kind of shied away from the term wisdom. They don't know what it means. Is it really those 8? And I think to simplify it, and I feel like it's really important to do that in everything you do. That wisdom is a code word for being at peace and having meaning in life. And those 8 elements in my book, Common Wisdom, really talk about those 8 and let you realize, what, if I mastered some of these, not all, but some, then I'll have more meaning and I'll have more depth. So I feel like wisdom is that.
So that was the goal for you, to kind of find out what is the greater picture, like what is the purpose of life, right? So in general, and that's kind of what led to, okay, well, who are these wise people that are at peace and happy and know the meaning of life?
And it wasn't easy to find them. And being the scientist I am, as I said, I don't like a single perspective. I really needed many people to say so. Around 20 interviews, I kind of got a feel of these people are very at peace with themselves, with life, with everything. And then I kept going. And yes, the goal was to, and from what I've heard, the book is already not only changing lives, but changing the way people think. And that's really important.
Of course. Now, if I were to take one key event from the book and make it my one goal to work on, what would you recommend, or what would that one item be from the advice in your book?
It would be, so first of all, it's funny because afterwards I've thought about this, and I don't know if I mentioned it, because I definitely mentioned different parts in there, but it's when things happen, realize that they're happening for you and not to you. And that I definitely say in the book. And so I think it just changes the way you think about it. And living in peace and living in faith, not in fear. And a lot of people do things out of fear. And instead having a sense of faith that it'll be okay. And not doesn't mean you don't do your best, but knowing that it's okay being anxious about it, because I'm sure I was anxious my whole life. Being anxious about it is not going to change the outcome.
Yes. Now, you mentioned being okay with whatever happens and looking at it as in it's happening for you and not to you. And I think that is such an important way of thinking, because we can look at a situation and say, okay, well, this is happening because I need to maybe change my path or myself or something, right? It's almost like an indicator that this is my wake up call to do something.
Yes.
Now, you said you went through a big life change in 2013 with your health. Do you
Oh,
want
it's still going on. Yeah, go ahead.
do you want to talk a little bit about what happened and how this mindset is helping you live with it or go through it, or if you don't mind sharing a little bit of your
So
story?
I think what happened was slowly I noticed in 2013 that I developed aches and pains and weakness and different things, and but it took me a good 6 years to be like, well, I need to change course. I can't see patients anymore and be an ER physician. I need to change course. I should look and think outside the box. But it definitely took a long time. And I think it was, and people misdiagnosed me, and ultimately I found out, okay, so it was chronic Lyme disease, but outside that, it was just like the feeling that this is not the path I want to continue in life.
Which was
And
just practicing, taking patients, being in ER, just doing your doctoral practice.
yeah, and that was just, it's funny because I did know back then, I knew I liked to write and do research. And I knew that writing and doing research kind of impacts a lot more people. Hundreds of thousands of people would read my articles, and then the article would be manifested into patient care for each physician. And so I knew that. But the book has more of an impact. And the idea is I took something complex and made it more simple. And that was my goal.
Wow. Now, who would be the right person to grab this book? Who did you
You know,
write this book for?
I initially thought about it, and I'm like, the people interested in common wisdom would be people above the age of 30. Anyone. You know, because I feel like at 30, you kind of realize, well, there's more to life. And but yet, but the more I think about it, I'm like, well, people want their kids to embody a lot of these elements. They want them to be kind and positive, curious and creative. They want that. So now I'm like, well, I think that it could go younger. So anyone. If I was a parent, I would ask my kids to read it. If I wasn't, I think it could apply to anyone.
Wow. Now, you have done a lot of research, and that's what you're really good at, and that's what led you to have such a detailed research program and be able to write the book. Can you tell us a little bit about more of your background? What other research projects have you worked on?
Oh, I did a lot of work in emergency medicine,
I
looking at
see.
what happens to patients after they go to the ER. But it was more on the big level, like global level.
Wow.
And so this is more of a, it's considered qualitative research in that you take a story, which I did with the 10 questions, and converted it into data and moved it into the 8 elements. Now, people said, oh, were there elements that didn't make it? Why 8? I'm like, well, we started with over 20 and we came down to 8. Now, for example, positivity had humor in it and had gratitude in it. And so people
Mm,
that were very grateful or very funny, got the positivity element assigned to them. So it wasn't just, oh, okay, this person is that. It was more than that.
I see. What were the 10 questions that you asked?
The 10 questions, I have them in my book under when I talk about the research project. They really just, they overall, I mean, people were asked why they were nominated for the project, and also, was there a life event that served as their teacher? And also, they were asked about specifically what trait they gravitate towards. And that's where the idea of kindness came about. And also what they thought about gratitude as well. So the questions really were not, oh, what do you think about wisdom? They were more about trying to get to know how they think
I
in those
see.
10 minutes. I mean, whatever, not 10 minutes. I usually talk to everyone around half an hour. The minimum time was 15 minutes, but most people talked about half an hour. There are a few that went to the hour range.
Wow, very nice. Now, when you were interviewing these 60 people, right, you said,
Yes.
when you spoke about life events, you said most of them had a life event that kind of triggered them to be a certain way or have a different perspective on life. Now, what was your biggest surprise in that? Was it that all of them experienced something traumatic, or do you have
Not
any sort of
all, but
statistics?
I would definitely say a good number did. And the life ends were, for example, I had a woman who had lost 2 husbands. And I
Mm.
talk about this in the book under resilience. And then yet she's like, you really can't control when you're born and when you die. All you can do in between is laugh. And
Oh, I love that.
she turned that into writing a book about people who've like suffered a loss in their life. So she turned it into something positive, despite how negative it was. So not everyone encountered difficulty, but of the ones that did, I was surprised at how they went through it and how they turned around.
Now, some questions to get to know you better and pick your brain. What is in life? I like to ask this to all my guests: is what does a happy and fulfilled life look like to you today?
The more I think about it, a happy and fulfilled life is having, for me, physical freedom, right? Because I can't really walk around and do a lot. And spending time with people that bring you joy. And it could be your immediate family, could be friends, it could be anything that brings you joy.
And these are things that sometimes we take for granted. We take the people in our lives for granted. We take our physical abilities for granted. So I'm glad that you're mentioning that for our listeners out there to help them have gratitude, even for the mere fact maybe they can, walk comfortably without any pain and aches.
Oh, I never thought I would take it for granted, but I do. And so my kids, for example, are like, oh, you can't drop me off, mom, or you can't walk a dog. I'm like, no. So when I see someone walking a dog, I'm like, I'm an ER physician. That was never on my radar. And
Mm-hmm.
yet it happens. So yeah, and or when I hear about someone saying I need to lose weight, I need to exercise. I'm like, that means you can exercise.
Wow.
That means you can do it. You can't. So yes, people take it for granted all the time.
Now, a question for your journey with writing the book and publishing it and now promoting it. How has that journey been for you as an entrepreneurial side of it? Because a lot of our listeners are also working on personal development and also on their business development. So, what advice would you give those who maybe want to publish a book?
It's not easy, and I have to say that what really helped me was having a great editor. He simplified it, and he also made it more approachable, more readable. And so I think if you were to write a book, I think it definitely is something that I mean, I think about someone was like, well, would you write another one soon? Have you thought of writing next one? I'm like, well, it was my experience in life in the last 10 years that led me to write this book. So right now, no. And I wouldn't think about it unless I had ideas. But it took all of what happened in the last 10 years for me to write this book. So a lot of the thoughts I have and the thoughts my 60 had went into it. And I had a great editor. So my advice is I don't know. I think about besides saying one thing, do you have a lot to share? And if you do, run it by someone too.
Wonderful. Now, how about the actual publishing and selling and making profits off of it? Like, about how much should somebody put aside to even save to start to work on that project in their life? And what's realistic to see some turnaround?
So I think the issue with writing a book is it definitely takes a lot of funds. And it takes a lot of patience. And so, for example, my book initially was a lot of people commented, oh, it's changed my life, it's great, whatever, but it really didn't soar until a national news channel featured it a few
Oh,
weeks
wow.
ago. So I think
Congratulations
that,
on
and
that.
that,
That's great.
yeah, and they were just so shocked that not shocked, they felt like those eight are really applicable to life. And so, but if I didn't have that, I mean, you still have to have skills of marketing, and a lot needs to go into it. And for example, your desire to do it with the big five, which is, Penguin, Random House, all of those, versus on your own is different as well. So I know the big five usually viewed as more of a business, versus if you do it yourself, you're paying for the publishing yourself, and whatever you make is afterwards. So it's a complicated process. I suggest someone look into what goes into it and think to themselves, do I want to write this book to promote myself, my voice, or my business?
I see. Thank you for sharing that. Now, before we conclude our podcast, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners?
I think I mentioned this to you before, but I mean, given that I think I lived my life in fear my whole life, fear of making sure I got into a good medical school. And then I went into a specialty that was so high pressure and fear-based. And my thoughts to others are, don't live life in fear. Live life in faith. Do things that bring you joy, because that's really important.
Wow, that's beautiful. I know it's easier said than done.
It's really hard.
Is there any thing that people can use as encouragement to not live in fear or not have fears hold them back?
I think it's just, look, it's easier said than done. On a regular basis, I say to remind myself, I have to take my own advice.
We all
Whenever
do.
I'm struggling, right? You just have to keep going. Practice makes perfect. And so keep practicing that same idea. And I think for resilience, for example, just keep saying this, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. And know that you will get to the other side. And so it's just reminding yourself. That's all. And being kind to yourself. Give yourself a break. No one's a robot. We are human. We're not robots. We're not computers, and we're human. So give yourself a break.
Take some downtime and reflect and relax.
Yeah, and realize, I really learned this, and even if you did a small thing, the next day, one thing, then that helps you get to the next.
Yeah, it almost builds momentum. I found that for myself. If I'm ever struggling to be productive or work on any projects, I just focus on one little task, even if it's just opening my notebook and knowing, okay, what am I focusing on right now? That initial action almost triggers for me to be more productive, and it triggers me to do the next thing and the next thing. And it almost flows. And that's kind of the way I break procrastination. So I definitely think that's amazing advice, that to just do one little thing. Don't worry, don't stress about everything.
Just do a small thing.
Wonderful. Now, my last question to you is, if you had a magic wand, what would you change in the world? First thing that comes to mind.
Oh, I was going to say poverty. And the reason is because now more than ever, I have learned that freedom is so important, and physical freedom for me is important. And the issue with poverty is you're limited by financial freedom. I think you're not able to do things because of finances. And so for me, the physicality of it is really important. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm uber wealthy, but I think that's less of an issue because I have so many other physical things. But yeah, when I think about poverty, I think, okay, well, if you have to worry about that as well as other things, then it's harder.
Yeah, so at least people don't have to worry about the finances, and they can focus on their purpose, their life. They can focus on what brings them joy, their physical well-being, mental well-being, and everything else. At least it takes away a big worry, or it gives them resources to live the purpose that they're meant to live. Where can people find you? Where can they purchase the book?
So the book Common Wisdom is on Amazon. It's also accessible on my website, lauragabayan.com. But remember that I initially had the Wisdom Research Project website. So we had the wisdomresearchproject.com website. That kind of leads into my website too. Because I have a hard name and people are not going to remember that.
We'll link everything below.
Yeah, well, but either way, but it is on Amazon. And both of those websites let you buy the book on Amazon too.
Wonderful. And the book was called Common Wisdom. Thank you to our listeners, and thank you, Dr. Laura Gabayan. It's been a pleasure talking to you and picking your brain about wisdom. And until next time, bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please rate and review this podcast. Follow and engage with us on social media under the Yegi Project. And if you're interested in being a guest, email info@theyegiproject.com, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.